Welcome everyone to this one-on-one with my very special guest here at the RETScreen World Conference, Gregory J. Leng himself, the director of RETScreen International. Greg, thanks for joining me.
Great, and thanks for having me, Anthony. It's a real pleasure.
I'm actually very pleased that you have time for us at the Red Screen World Conference because as everyone knows or should know by now, on LinkedIn you have some 32 million. Actually, I'm exaggerating. About 32,000 followers and growing. And you've been great about regularly posting Red Screen updates to
Mhm.
LinkedIn. So if any of our audience members haven't found you on LinkedIn, please do so. But what I like is, now we have you down for a much longer chat where we can go over, and we will go over some of those updates to version 9, which just came out recently. But I also want to explore the genesis of Rescreen, with the man himself, who was behind it. Sort of take us back in time, what was going on then, and how Rescreen got its start. Maybe you can speak to that.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah. Let's start. I guess starting from the beginning. So Red Screen originally was sort of an outgrowth of my master's thesis in energy engineering at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. That was about 1993. Um, in that thesis, uh, what I did is I did an economic analysis for photovoltaic generation on utility networks. So that was back then there was very few photovoltaic systems worldwide. It was a very small market back then, but I wanted to look at the economics and so to start my thesis, at first what I did is I created a simplified analysis in a simple spreadsheet just to sort of see what sort of numbers I should be getting. Um, I then went on for the next sort of 18 months or so, doing a very detailed analysis with marginal fuel costs and marginal emissions from the utility, where the utilities were actually able to give me hour by hour, what generators are generating, what are the costs of the fuels. Did this very detailed analysis. Learned a lot in the process, but I got to the end of the thesis, completed the economic analysis, I went back and I said, those numbers look pretty familiar. I went back and looked at my simple spreadsheet that I had developed before doing all that detailed work for 18 months. And it basically came up with this essentially the same answer. So for me, that was kind of an aha moment. I said, okay, we can do this detailed analysis to sort of determine and validate what we think should be the results. But I learned very early on that a smart, simplified analysis done properly can give you essentially the same results. And so for me, that was a real aha moment. Um, from there, I was hired by the International Fund for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency to go to India to set up a renewable energy and energy efficiency feasibility fund, where essentially we had 50,000 US dollars per study to fund, wind projects and energy service companies and things like that for feasibility studies. As we're doing that, of course, each study costs $50,000 to $100,000, um, and it was very difficult to evaluate, for example, photovoltaics, but then also go over to wind energy or to lighting, energy efficiency, et cetera. There really were no comprehensive tools that allowed you to do that. So I really saw a gap in the market at that point. Just sort of fast forward a couple of years, I joined the government of Canada, the Cabinet Energy Labs in Varennes, Quebec. I was given the mandate to manage a new program called Renewable Energy for Remote Communities, basically focused on cost-effective markets, displacing very expensive diesel fuel for heating and electricity generation. The idea was to help develop early markets for renewables. In that process, I go, okay, well, we're going to spend the program funding very quickly if we spend $50,000 to $100,000 per study. So instead, we made the decision to instead develop a standardized analysis tool that we could then give away for free, with the idea of significantly reducing the cost and standardizing the cost of doing feasibility studies. So that tool originally was called the Renewable Energy Technologies Screening Tool, which was branded RETScreen. And like I said, instead of spending a lot of money funding studies, we said, let's instead spend the same amount of money developing a tool that then everybody could use for multiple technologies. So that's what we did. Um, Early on, we had some real key people helping out. A guy named Peng Shou, who's one of the largest wind developers now in Canada. He had some real significant contributions in the first couple of years, and then Nathalie Meloche, who joined my team in 1996 working on RETScreen, and she still works with me today. She actually manages the RETScreen Innovation Lab. So Nathalie has been a key person working with me over the last 25 years. And of course, we use many consultants. So what we've tried to do is sort of bring in the best of both the public and the private sector together. So we've had about 400 different consultants work on RETScreen as well. So we bring in all sorts of expertise from cost analysis, wind turbine expertise, lighting energy efficiency modeling, various different types of expertise. And so we were able to get the first version of the software completed in April 1998 was the first release, and that was called version 98. And that was kind of the beginning, the public beginning of RETScreen.
Interesting, interesting. So the public version, 98. But if I can take you back a little bit to I guess it was and let's see, I wrote it down here. That was the renewable energy for remote communities. You were saying that's kind of
Mhm.
when we first got the renewable energies technology screening tool,
Mhm.
and hence where we get the REST screen name. Uh, how was it viewed? How was it being received at that time? I'm assuming good because you eventually developed it more and took it public, but what were the initial reactions?
In government, back then at least, there was they the concept of cost effective and business development and all that, and why was this government person talking about that, especially at a research lab. But fortunately, the department, the government, when I joined the department, I basically, I left a really good organization to join, and basically all I ask is that you just leave me alone, and you let me do my job, and I promise you we will do an outstanding job. And I have to give the government and my three director generals along the way, they sort of honored that commitment and have supported me, and basically let us do our thing. Um, and the other thing that was funny, because with government, we we've always been customer driven. And so again, that's not typically government speak, um, but for us, the whole success of RETScreen and everything, it's because we are so focused on customers, the users of the software, um, and and we as a team take the investment that Canadian taxpayers and our customers and our partners who invest in the software, we take their investment very seriously. And so that really, we set sort of a culture of RETScreen and the development early on. And that has stayed with us today, and I think has led to a lot of the successes that we've had.
Well, and I think we're going to get into some of those successes now, because if you could for us, Greg, kind of talk about, well, you spoke about where we were, back in the 90s. So over the ensuing, call it 2 decades-ish, how has the software platform evolved over that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the original purpose, as I mentioned, was essentially to dramatically reduce both the time and the cost of preparing feasibility studies. That was our sort of raison d'etre. That was what we were really focused on. We first had a focus on renewable energy technologies, or RETs. That was our initial mandate. Um, so what we did with those original renewable energy technologies is we began to sort of build out the platform in terms of what do our users need to do proper analysis, do it accurately, do it fast, at low cost, et cetera. So we began to add databases such as climate databases and product databases and things like that. So that was one thing we started to do. The other thing is actually the United Nations and the World Bank approached us to come up with standardized greenhouse gas calculations. So that was early on, before the Kyoto Protocol was even signed. It was very early in the UN process for climate change. And so we, with the United Nations, created a standardized greenhouse gas analysis tool that, and then the World Bank came in too and wanted us to build in carbon finance modules into the tool, and carbon trading and all that. And then a number of other banks, both the multilateral banks and the big private banks, also asked us to build in risk analysis modules. How risky are these projects? What's the chance of a project going bankrupt, et cetera? So we built out these sort of what we would call horizontal analytic capabilities. So those capabilities I just mentioned would apply for wind or solar or hydro, sort of in a standardized way. So that was what we called the horizontal development. We then began to build out the tool for other applications, other technologies. So the next technologies we started to add was cogeneration, or combined heat and power, including district energy. So that's where you're combining the electric power generation, but also looking to recover waste heat to make sure the overall process is efficient and cost effective. So we added cogeneration, but then of course the next big one to add was energy efficiency, because you obviously don't want to spend a lot of money on renewables and cogeneration if you don't first use your energy efficiently. So we began to build out energy efficiency modules and models and technologies, things like lighting, heating, heat pumps, efficient motors, things like that. So we built out those models, and all the data that goes with it, and the product data, et cetera. And then more recently, we've expanded to include transportation analysis. So your fleets, like your bus fleets, and your fleet of vehicles if you're an organization, or even for your own car at your home. And the idea there was to sort of broadly cover the main applications, the many energy consuming applications. So we've built that out over time. The other thing we wanted to do, particularly working with our international partners, is language, of course, is a key issue in terms of doing analysis. Now, we have the advantage in Canada, of being officially a bilingual country, both English and French. So everything we do, of course, is done in the software in English and French. And by doing that, we essentially create the standardized databases to allow us to then easily add then Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, et cetera, because we're already in the bilingual mode in developing the software. So we just took that and expanded that, originally with the UN and then others investing, where we've now expanded the software out to 38 languages that cover more than 2/3 of the world's population. So that, I think, was a sort of a key, again, a horizontal geographic spread of the software. Now, what happens though is over time, as more and more people use the software, and as we start to get into energy management, which of course, Anthony, your organization is a big part of, the energy, so performance analysis is sort of ongoing energy management. So it's one thing to assess projects and start to implement projects, but of course, what we want is persistent energy savings over time. And that's where energy performance analysis comes in. That's where you do things like data monitoring. You do regression analysis to what's called normalizing your data. You do things like measurement and verification, and there's international standards to follow around that. So over the last decade, we've been building up these sort of advanced analytical tools in RETScreen to allow the industry to do this for energy management, but also for power plant management as well. In that process, because the software kept getting more and more complex, but also computing power got more and more powerful, it enabled us to, we ended up switching over to a Windows-based platform. Originally, we started in Excel, and then we had Visual Basic for applications, VBA. And so we had programming in there, but it was primarily just in Excel. We've now moved completely into a Windows-based platform that is cloud enabled. So it connects to the cloud in all different points. And the computing power has gone up so much. So for example, in my master's thesis, we used to look at nuclear reactors, for example, and a calculation could take 8 or 9 hours overnight on a mainframe, and it would cost the professor maybe $10,000 to run that calculation by renting the mainframe. Whereas in RETScreen now, on your standard laptop computer, that same calculation could be done in about 1-2 seconds for free. So computing power itself has also helped in in this transition with RETScreen. As we've developed that, so of course our large and growing customer base, they're constantly saying, hey, we need this, we want that, we need this. And so, we constantly are reviewing that and seeing which are the big ones, which are the ones that can have the biggest impact, from a government perspective, from an impact, things like helping mitigate climate change, et cetera, and also most valuable to our users. And so over the last 6 or 7 years, we ended up adding benchmarking models. So you can sort of very quickly benchmark your commercial building versus some other commercial building, or your power plant, your solar plant versus another solar plant. That's a sort of your quick hits in terms of analysis. But we also had a very large growing user base of organizations that own many facilities, many buildings, many factories, et cetera. So at their request, we've built in portfolio-wide analysis capabilities. So essentially, rather than bottom up at a project level, you can come top down from an entire portfolio level. So that's been a big emphasis for us over the last 6 or 7 years. Out of that has come RETScreen Expert, which is the latest, most advanced version of the software. And in there are sort of 4 main modules. And that's reflected also in the conference agenda that you see. There's the benchmark analysis and feasibility analysis modules, which help you determine very quickly, does this project make sense, et cetera. Then there's the performance analysis module that said, hey, is it performing as expected? Are we actually saving as expected? And then there's the portfolio analysis module that says, okay, not just this one building, but what about the 200 or 300 or 5,000 buildings that we own? Are we overall as an organization meeting our objectives? And so that's where we are today with RETScreen Expert, and as reflected in the talks at the conference here.
So looking at RETScreen Expert, what are or which feature are you most excited about?
Yeah, that's good. That's a tough question. I mean, of course, I'm biased. I am excited about most parts of RETScreen,
You,
but
you probably like them all.
I like them all. It's like I love all my kids equally. It's like but I have to, if I have to pick, I would say the virtual energy analyzer that that really stands out. It's where we use artificial intelligence to help people, make decisions. So literally now, a user can prepare a pre-feasibility study for any sort of, power or energy efficiency cogeneration project, literally in 5 seconds or less. Now, as I mentioned before, the same sort of study like that in the past, easily could have cost $50,000 to $100,000. So for me, that is sort of transformational, and that kind of gets into our reason why government is involved in this, is that we want to help Canadians and the world reduce greenhouse gas emissions, help solve this climate change issue, and to be able to do that as cost effectively as possible, so that no one wastes money in that process. So RETScreen, we believe, is helping that, and the virtual energy analyzer just really speeds things up. And so basically what it's doing, it's helping remove a significant barrier for the industry, both public and private sector, to assess best options. Say, hey, what do we do? Well, this helps you do that very fast and basically for free. Now, the other thing it does is, now that so many organizations are getting really interested in trying to do something about climate change, never mind the sort of cost-effective energy stuff that they've done for decades. What this enables also is for organizations to do it at scale. So we're working with some customers right now where we're doing, I think it's about 8,000 pre-feasibility studies simultaneously for all of their buildings. So you can do this at scale, and again, it's all about speeding it up. How can we get these projects built faster, the cleaner projects, and do it as cost effectively as possible? The other thing about the virtual energy analyzer is it covers multiple technologies, multiple applications. And so when I was in India, in 1994, we'd spend $50,000 to $100,000 per study for a wind farm or a solar project, and that project might likely never get built because this feasibility study in the end shows it's not cost effective, for example. So the virtual energy analyzer allows you to look at multiple technologies, multiple options like power plants and cogen and even electricity storage, or on real property, residential, commercial, institutional buildings and factories and even agriculture. And then more recently, we've even had transportation archetypes. So it lets you look at multiple options very quickly. And then in version 9, which you mentioned, um, a new thing we've just released, which is also be transformational in terms of helping the world meet its 2050 net zero objectives for emissions, is we've built in what's called a deep retrofit archetypes. So we've actually built them in and say, okay, what if we want to get all of the emissions out of these facilities? How do we do that? So we've built in artificial intelligence when the software is actually helps you do that, and that is being presented here at the conference as well. So, so that's the one I want to. I'm looking for the next thing to get everybody excited. So we're keeping our eye out in the future as well. Uh, so
Well, I can tell by your answers, Greg, that you guys don't think small when it comes to red screen.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad you bring that up actually, because the why should no, let's not, let's think global, let's look at global solutions. And it's I've had a lot of Canadians come up to me and say how proud they are to be Canadian, that RETScreen was developed here, and and for me, I feel like I'm a citizen of the planet, and so I love to see red screen being used in small villages in Africa and in South America, and of course across Canada, the US. So I tell you, it's been absolutely fantastic doing this, and I'm convinced we have a global solution here for climate change. And I just want this user community here at the conference and others to join in, and let's do it. Let's help solve this major problem.
Now, Greg, you and I have been chatting a little while now. You seem like a good guy. You don't seem like you're bent on world domination.
Mhm.
But what is your vision of the future for the red screen software and platform?
Our vision here is to have global impact and to make a real difference. Uh, and so, and I believe we've got the model that allows us to do that, and we're going to continue to push forward on that. So what are the one of the ways we're going to continue to do that, is related to the Paris Accord and the sort of the world's need to get to net zero emissions by 2050. It's real, it's an imminent threat, and we need to do something about it. And so we are transitioning Red Screen more to helping the world address sort of the 2050 targets. So that means pushing the envelope in terms of cost effectiveness of which technologies might be in there. In our first 2 decades, we're very much focused on cost effective applications. That's why, energy efficiency and these sorts of things. But we're beginning to push the envelope, by adding, for example, deep retrofits. They might not be immediately cost effective, but over the life cycle of a facility, they become cost effective, particularly when you start to introduce, carbon pricing and things like that. So that's going to be, and that's already beginning to happen. Is this focus on this net zero emissions target for 2050? And then all the models and the data and everything and the training that supports that around the platform. Um, but we'll also continue to build out the Red Screen platform. Could be even another sort of our, if we had a second value proposition, is that Red Screen is a comprehensive energy analysis platform, all within one multilingual platform that you can do all this sort of analysis. And we're going to continue to build out that platform because there's huge advantage to users to be able to do all of that sort of analysis and everything in not only the users like the engineering firms in one platform, but then with their customers, the building owners, and with their the professors and their new co-op students that are coming from the universities. There's a real advantage to a common platform. And so we're going to keep pushing that hard. So basically, as we described, as I described sort of sort of 10 to 20-year history of RETScreen, how it evolved, we're going to continue to increase both our horizontal as well as our vertical applications and capabilities. So what does that mean? That means adding both breadth and depth to the software. So, for example, adding breadth is we're in the process right now of adding auto manufacturing plants to our list of archetypical facilities. So we're spreading out the number of large applications, but also smaller ones over time. But also within those plants, we're looking, this is more of a vertical application. So what about electricity demand reduction or load shifting technologies like batteries and thermal storage and things like that? So that's an example of vertical integration as well. So we're going to be building out both the horizontal and vertical capabilities of the software. Again, all driven by user needs or by our funders as well. The Another thing that's happened because of the Internet of Things and the you know and how the world has really moved to cloud computing and all that, it's made it much easier now for RedScreen to connect to data sources. So we've developed this RedScreen Connect capability in the software that allows you to automate connections to other platforms, other data sets, etc. So we're going to continue to do that so that you can also do it in a more real-time basis. Our users are asking for that. And this is also where we're helping build out the ecosystem. There's lots of companies with data acquisition and metering systems, so we'll continue to work with them to connect their systems into RedScreen so that our users can work with their systems in our system and vice versa. Um, Now, part of that too is when you start to get all this real-time data streaming into the software, it opens up the opportunity for higher resolution analysis. When you get into, for example, 15-minute, peak load calculations and things like that, or real-time calculations. So we're building in more and more of those capabilities, and we'll continue to do that over time. Um, you know, Building in also artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have some in there now, but we'll continue as that field expands. We'll do that as well. Um, we're also going to keep an open eye for emerging low carbon technologies. Um, our focus, as I mentioned, has always been on cost effective, but there's going to be a series of enabling technologies, such as electricity storage, that will then allow other technologies, more wind, more solar, et cetera. So we'll continue to look at building or thermal storage in buildings, ice storage for cooling or thermal storage for heating. So we'll continue to look at that and building out possible models there. And also being open to, for example, hydrogen fuels, and we already have fuel cells and stuff, but building out the hydrogen models over time, even open to carbon capture, utilization, storage, and even possibly small modular nuclear reactors too over time. We've had a number of requests for that as well. And as that market starts to develop, it wouldn't be that difficult for us to add a module for RedScreen in that. And then tying all that together, is the sort of the strengthening our portfolio-wide analysis capabilities. Um, Allowing that sort of top-down analysis. There is a focus a lot on for very large users, but they tend to have huge impacts, and that also is a way all those service companies, all the engineering firms, those tend to be their customers, and so there's a sort of symbiotic effect when they're all working together as well. So we'll continue to build out the portfolio-wide analysis capabilities, for planning, so they can do overall portfolio planning, and then managing and reporting things like greenhouse gas and greenhouse gas each year, and energy management on a regular basis. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Pretty much it, he says. That's that's a full docket, my friend.
Good.
But now, one final question for you, because I imagine the people who are attending here would also like maybe a little sneak peek at what might be, just around the corner for the next version or the next, major update to RedScreen. So, can you speak to anything? I mean, can you speak about anything now that is in the works that might be just around the corner for RedScreen in the next few years?
Yeah, that's great. And that's the sort of stuff I get asked on LinkedIn all the time from our users and everything. Okay, what's next, and um, yeah. So I mean, if we look at it from the sort of the four main modules in RETScreen, if we sort of look at benchmark and feasibility analysis together, um, of course, one of it is just the ongoing maintenance and improvements to the database software and the databases and all that. So we'll continue to update our database, various types of databases. We've recently added utility rates database, and also dynamic emissions factors database, and that's those are becoming more and more popular. So we'll continue to expand those in terms of how much resolution and data we have, and also geographic distribution. Um, this work that is being funded by the IESO. We're building in electricity demand response and load reduction capabilities such as electricity storage. So we're heavily working on that right now, and that those will be coming out in the next 1 to 2 years. And then the other one is the adding more deep retrofit archetypes into the virtual energy analyzer. We just, the first launch we just did had 30. We've got about 70 more coming. Um, we're and so basically every couple of months we'll do what we call a hot fix, which is a quick update to the software, and we'll just keep adding more and more, like high schools and apartment buildings, on and on and on. And then we'll also be developing new archetypes where they're high energy consumers. For example, we're working now on data centers, big cloud computing centers and all that, and data centers. So we're working on an archetype like that now. So that's coming too. That's on the sort of benchmark feasibility side. On the performance analysis side, it's this continuously now adding automated connectors as part of RESTScreen Connect. But what we've done recently, though, we're doing direct connectors. So where we're actually going directly into the database of the metering companies or their customers. So literally, as their database updates, as it meters the building or as utility bills get updated, it automatically gets updated in real time in REDScreen. So we've had some we just released a few new direct connectors, and we've got a bunch more coming. So that I think that's going to be super valuable to our users, but also to these metering companies and utility bill management software companies, things like that. Another one that we've had requests on gets to resolution of data and analysis capabilities. So, we always try to keep the analysis as simple as possible, um, because we know it can produce highly accurate results, but we still have customers still wanting the more detailed. And so, we're not going to fight against our customers on these sorts of requests. So, for example, now we're adding hourly regression analysis to our model, um, and things like that. And the other interesting thing we've done recently, we linked in Energy Plus, which is an hourly energy simulation model for buildings, for green buildings and things like that. We've actually now done a direct connector. So if the engineer says, no, I want to do this very detailed analysis for the energy model, no problem. They do the analysis in that tool. It has a direct connector to REDScreen, and then you can use REDScreen for all the financial, greenhouse gas, the overall reporting, and also then makes that tool available in 38 languages. So, we're going to continue to add those sorts of connectors as well, so that we can connect into the other tools out there in the market. Another one is, the ISO 50001 energy management standard is quite important and growing. So we're continuing to work to make sure REDScreen is helping meet our customers meet the standard, whereas RESTscreen is the sort of the energy management information system required as part of that standard. So we continue to work on that. And so, for example, one of the requirements in there is to have a project tracking tool. So which lighting projects, which heating projects, when did you implement them? How much do they cost? What was the savings? So we could do that now in REDScreen, but we're going to do it more explicitly. So it's a dynamic calendar that you tick off, and then you can track all your projects over time. So just things like that, again, coming from user requests. And then a new analysis capability that we're developing. And this comes from being able to have sort of real-time data and higher resolution data analysis. So we're developing, or just beginning now to develop a facility level and even at the equipment level, a continuous energy and GHG performance optimizer tool. So basically, it allows you to do essentially ongoing commissioning or even simplified fault detection for your facilities. We're having lots of people ask for that as well. So the idea is not to replace the very sort of detailed fault detection and all that, but it's to say, hey, how can we get the quick hits? How can we help our customers identify problems and solve them quicker rather than waiting at the end when they get the monthly energy bill, et cetera. So that's something we're just getting underway now, and that's going to be some really useful, I think, to our energy managers, facility managers. Um, then to conclude, the last part again is the portfolio analysis module. So I mentioned one of our customers, yeah, we're doing their carbon neutral portfolio plan for I believe it's around 8,000 buildings right now. So how do we get all of their buildings down to net zero emissions by 2050? So as part of that process, we're investing in automating that tool um, as much as possible. So then that all these service providers, all these engineering architecture firms can then use that automated tool to help rapidly do carbon neutral portfolio plans for many, many, many customers, like school boards and municipalities and university campuses and government agencies and corporations and things like that. So that's that. So that is, it's going to be an automated tool that uses all the deep retrofit archetypes, uses all the measured data you have, and comes out and helps guide you to that 2050 target. So that's going to be pretty exciting as we develop that. And so early versions of that are starting to come out now. And the other thing, the sort of final thing is because RETScreen, it's a sort of a standardized analysis approach. It's a software platform and it's structured around a database. It's not that difficult for us. If you think of a database like an Excel spreadsheet, a column could say energy consumption, power consumption. So it's not that difficult to say water consumption, waste consumption, etc. And these tend to fall under the broader sustainability goals. So we have many users saying, could you keep building out, we're using RETScreen for energy and for greenhouse gas reporting. Could you not add in more and more capabilities for water, for waste management, et cetera? So we are building that out. And so the objective is that you'll be able to use RETScreen not only for your energy and greenhouse gas reporting and management and implementation, but also expanding it out to water, waste, and other sort of sustainability items. So that's sort of, I would say that's kind of the next 3 to 5 years plan. And the team's already working super hard on that.
I guess in the times in which we live and the consciousness that we have around the globe, it kind of feels like a natural extension because you already have this good tool for energy, and it can. I'm sure it's not easy, but it just sounds like the natural extension of RedScreen's capabilities. That's fantastic to hear that
Yeah,
we are going to be seeing this over the next several years.
yeah, yeah. And also, things like waste or water use, they have downstream effects. So if you use less water, if you have to, at the end use, like energy efficiency or water efficiency, you have to filter less water coming into the plant, therefore less energy, less chemicals, et cetera. So you then start to get into the whole circular economy idea. So we're gonna try to sort of broadly sort of look at these broader aspects in terms of sustainability as we go forward.
Greg, lots of good stuff coming down the pipeline. I again appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me, and we can all get a little more into your head and into the musings and things going on with the entire Red Screen team. please go on to LinkedIn, find Gregory J. Leng. By then, he will probably have 32 billion followers, but that's okay. He's always willing to have another one. Greg, thanks again for taking the time.
Great, Anthony, and thanks for doing this today. Thanks.